Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, and we're going to talk about the difference between citing a Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition monster and identifying a Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition monster. All right, let's get into this. All right, so I find it really fascinating how Dungeons & Dragons adventurers, PCs, interact with the monsters in the game. The game's only 47 years old. We've had 5 different iterations of the game, and I believe that the Dungeons & Dragons game is in its inception phase. I actually think the game will go through different phases over the years. It's going to go through inception, manifestation, transformation, and back to inception, okay? And believe it or not, I don't even think we've ever even entered into manifestation or transformation. We're still in the inception game, in the inception part of Dungeons and Dragons as an element of Americana and as a life transforming element. Okay, and the reason why I think that is I don't think Dungeons and Dragons is fully understood for what it is. Not even by the vast majority of its own fans understand what Dungeons and Dragons actually is. Okay, so basically. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the difference between citing a monster and identifying a monster, specifically for your D&D adventures, for your D&D PCs. Okay. Now, the reason we're going to talk about this today is I think the game doesn't really understand the difference between this, and the reason why is I think Gary Gygax and none of the Dungeons & Dragons 1E, 2E, 3E, 4E, 5E designers were birders or dedicated birders or first class birders. I don't think they were any of those things. So, but I am. So one, you're like, hey Scott, are you talking about birding? And I am. So one of the things is like I come from the 80s, and back in the 80s there was a little bit of shame attached to the word nerd. Actually, there was a lot of shame attached to the word nerd. You had to hide your nerdom, and I still have some of that in me. So one of the reasons why I don't talk to you about, I love birding. I'm really into birding. I have a life list, and I'm really into birding, right? But I don't talk to you about birding much because it's just like how much nerdery can you bring to the table, right? And so I'm going here today because I think this is relevant, and I think it needs to be added to Dungeons & Dragons in order to improve Dungeons & Dragons, all right? But as a birder, I understand the difference between citing and identifying. So when I see a bird, I have sighted a bird, right? When I see it with my eyeballs, I have sighted a bird. Now, there are different attributes, no pun intended, because D&D uses a different term for attributes. Birds have attributes and they have parameters, okay? So what is this wingspan? What is the size? What is the shape of the bird? What are the colors of the bird? What is the bird doing? Is it soaring or is it flapping its wings constantly? Every single one of these is a parameter that a good birder uses to identify the bird. And a good birder knows that sighting and identification almost never, 99% of the time, happen at the same time, okay? So you could sight a bird, but you haven't identified that bird, right? You need to understand, once you see the bird, you have to process it. You have to say, was that a land bird or a water bird? How large was that bird? That's too large. That's like a warbler size. It's really not a robin or a jay size, right? You also have to say, what was the shape of that bill? Was its uppers a set of colors, and was its lowers a set of different colors, right? Is that, I think I know what that bird is, but wait a second. That type of bird isn't actually indigenous to this area. So even though I think I saw that bird, did I actually see that bird? I really need to think. I need to, look at the collection of images that are in my mind from that sighting, and good birders will immediately start taking notes the moments they've sighted a bird, right? In order to properly identify the bird, right? So in Dungeons & Dragons, your adventurers are going to sight a monster, okay? They could see it from 5 feet away, and they could see it from 50 feet away, okay? And your player characters, they may think they know what they're dealing with, and they may start to take action based on their sighting, right? But the identification may not be done, right? Now, this can be really critically important And right now, we don't have any mechanics within Dungeons and Dragons that allow a player character who has accurately identified a monster to fight that monster more effectively than if they've only sighted it, right? Because the reality is, rarely does a sighting immediately turn into identification. You need to process the images, the sounds, the patterns that your mind has taken in, right? You have your sighting done, but you don't have your identification done, right? And every birder knows this. This is like second nature for any, serious first-rate birder, right? But the reality is there's no mechanics in Dungeons & Dragons for this. The closest we have is Rangers. We do give a few advantages to Rangers because they have the ability to turn a sighting into identification more quickly. And that's good, right? And what we're doing right now is we're giving advantages, both literally and figuratively, to Ranger characters, but we are giving disadvantages to other characters that have simply sighted and probably misidentified a monster, right? The other thing that I think is really important from a sighting and identification perspective is not all birds, like even when you sight one, what age range is it, right? And also in what state is that monster, right? So all of this is additional areas that we can grow the complexity of Dungeons and Dragons adventurers processing the monsters that they've seen. I am definitely hoping that they will start to build this into Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. I would actually love to see an entire source book on sighting and identifying monsters, right? And then give real advantages to every single class for their own specific ways that they sight and then identify monsters. So this is my official request to Wizards of the Coast. Please create a monster sighting and identification guide, right? Please, and I would really, really request that you displace one of your hardback adventures to do it. That would make me so happy, right? That's my official request. Also, all of what I just said is my opinion. I really think we need to focus on the difference between sighting and identifying monsters in our D&D 5th edition campaigns. What do you think? Do you think this is a valid, useful distinction? If so, let me know in the comments below. And if not, you can go jump in a lake. No, make sure you put on your preserver before you jump in a lake, and that it's a safe place, and it's very shallow. Oh, when you jump feet first, not head first. There you go. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.